Okay, I think we're ready to start. Boker Tov, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. I can't welcome the people in Israel because now that we changed the clock, so my sister said she's in Efrat still, but obviously they can't come because it's basically Shabbos now in Israel. But okay, so we have a North American, which should be learning should be a scoot for the situation in Israel. Okay, this is class 104 in our ongoing series, and basically we're going to focus as we just began last week on the second paragraph of the Shema, Vaya im Shamoa. And we mentioned last week that the Rashi points out sort of the fundamental difference between the first and the second paragraph. There's a lot of repetition. Tefillin, Avat Hashem, to love God, mezuzah, tefillin, learning Torah. Half of the second paragraph is really a repetition of the first paragraph. So that in of itself is not the end of the world. Remember, there are 5 chapters apart in the Torah. I mean, there's lots of repetition in the Torah. I know we were all trained, and not that it isn't true, but we were all trained that whenever there's repetition in the Torah is there's a reason. The Torah that just doesn't repeat something. That is true, but it may not be 100% true. There are things that are just, and for sure, some of the commentaries say that sometimes the Torah just repeats things for emphasis. Probably the best example, and this is really one of the first things I had the pleasure to learn with Nechama Leibowitz when I was in Gurs Kollel for Smicha for YU. So we spent a year in Israel, and I was in Rav Lichtenstein Shir that year, Rav Aaron Lichtenstein, and Nechama Leibowitz. So this week's parsha, of course, 67 verses on the finding of a wife for Yitzchak, and it's repetitive, the whole story, and that's what our sages make a comment. Yafesi chatan shalavdei avod. More pleasant is the table talk, whatever, the discussion of the servants of our avot than the Torah of their children. The laws of Shabbos, as the Mishnah says, as harim hatluyim bisara. I love that expression. It's like mountains being held up by a hair. The laws of Shabbos, basically nothing in the Torah. Keep Shabbos. I don't know how to keep Shabbos. It's like a mountain on a hair. But the story of how to find Rivka, oh my God, 67 verses, repetitive. So some people say, no, it's repetitive, big deal. There are a lot of changes. That's like the Ibn Ezra says like that. But Nechama Leibowitz could not stand that approach. This is not our shir for today, obviously. But if you look carefully, you'll notice the changes are unbelievable. When the sages praise the servant, and remember, he's never named. Everybody calls him Eliezer. That may be nice, but that's not in the Chumash anywhere. It never says that. Just he's always called Eved. Whenever it refers to him by Avram, he's called Eved. Wherever it refers to him by Lavan and Metul, he's called Ish. That's in of itself a fascinating thing. Just notice. In other words, to Avram, he's an Eved. To Lavan, he's an Ish. He's someone of great stature. He's never named. That's his humility, that he did his task without his personal ambition. And the rabbis say he had a daughter that he really wanted to marry, Yitzchak, but he put all aside his personal ego to carry out the mission that he had to do. And you'll notice he made a lot of changes from the instructions. One, I'll just mention one. Abraham said, go back to where I came from. Whereas when the servant talks, he says, go to my family. Abraham never said to go to his family. It didn't have to be someone from his family. But the Eved wanted to make it sound really cool, or coming all the way just for your family. He emphasizes the monetary aspect, how wealthy Abraham is when he's talking to Lavan. He knows who he's talking to. Anyways, there you always have to look. So there's but you have a lot of repetition to it. So the mitzvah of love Hashem, just figure throw in a little bit on Parshat HaShavuot. The fact that the second paragraph repeats itself is not you don't have to go crazy why that happens. Lots of things are repeated in the Torah, and lots of things are for emphasis. But of course, we mentioned last week that the first paragraph is written in the singular and the second person is written in the plural. And we discussed the whole notion. That's why learning Torah to women is from the second paragraph, because the idea that the restriction on women learning, that's a generic. It's not for everybody. There are always exceptions to the rule. It's not inherent in the woman. It's a sociological situation. So for most women, it wasn't appropriate to learn Torah Sheba'al Peh, but individually that could always be. But then, so we'll see a lot of things that play out in that relationship between the individual and the our community, I think I ended this year by talking about how we are judged much differently. Individuals are judged for individual mitzvot. The community is judged for our unity, not having machloket and not talking lashon hara about one another. The individual is judged for Shabbos and kashrut and etc. But that's not at all relevant when God judges our community. And that's a very important, powerful point that individually, don't worry if somebody else keeps kosher or sure. That's not your problem. You worry about that their values are good, they care about our community, they work together with our community. Yeah, it's nice. If you can get them to keep kosher too, that's also nice. But much more important are the values that unite us as a community on a communal level. The individual level, that's very much more between man and God. And whatever, we know you're not supposed to tell somebody what they're doing is wrong, an individual mitzvah, unless you think you're going to be very effective. As a matter of fact, it's forbidden. Your next door neighbor who pulls out on the car on Shabbos, you're not allowed to tell him, don't drive on Shabbos. I mean, because obviously he's not going to listen. I mean, so what's the point? So the Gemara says it's forbidden to tell somebody to do something. If the guy is causing machloket, he's causing dissent in our community, that's a different story. Then that's a communal responsibility to stop such a thing. So that's it is a very different way. What I don't think I mentioned this last week, and if I did, please remind me. And if I did, and even if you don't remind me, it's always good to review. But I don't think I mentioned this aspect. Of course, this is our series is on tefillah, on prayer, on davening. So how do we know there's a mitzvah to daven? So the truth of the matter is, we've mentioned a number of times, but probably not so recently, that it's only the Rambam who says that there's a biblical mitzvah to daven, and pretty much everybody else says davening is a rabbinic mitzvah. It's kind of an amazing thought if you think about it. There's no Torah mitzvah to daven. That's hard to accept. Rav Soloveitchik sort of dwelt upon that list, that the Rambam saved tefillah. What do you mean there's no biblical mitzvah to daven? But that's the simple reading of the Gemara, and that's how, I don't know the simple reading, but that's how most people, most of the commentaries explain. Everybody, the Rambam included, everybody agrees to daven 3 times a day. That's for sure. To daven all the things we daven. Biblical davening is very short. It can be, the Rambam says, very, very short. 5 minutes, 2 minutes. You just have to praise God a little bit, ask for something, and say thank you. That's all you got to do. Take 1 minute, 5 minutes. So davening, but either the rabbinic source of davening, in other words, the rabbis based it on a verse, or the biblical source. Where's the source that we have to pray? What's the source? Where's it?
I'm going to ask you that.
Okay, so I'm asking you.
I don't know.
Nobody knows. So it's right here in Vayam Shamoah. The pasuk says, "Lavdo b'chol levavchem u'b'chol nafshechem." You have to worship God with all your heart. And the Gemara says, actually, I don't remember the exact page it is, and I'm sorry I didn't. Not sharing my screen with that source. Hopefully,
avodah shebalev.
Right, Ezehu avodah shebalev. It says to worship God with your heart. What's worship God of your heart? Zuhu tefillah. And this, of course, Rav Soloveitchik's famous, one of his famous examples of a mitzvah where we distinguish between, we call it the ma'aseh ha-mitzvah and the kiyum ha-mitzvah. This was the action of the mitzvah and the fulfillment of the mitzvah. This essay, or whatever you want to call it, is in Al-Tshuva, which I've mentioned many times, Pinchas Peli's amazing work, a recapitulation of the Rav's, of 8 of the tshuva drushes the Rav used to give every year, Rav Soloveitchik, between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. So he has a whole chapter, Ben Yachid Hatzibur, what I'm alluding to now, between the individual and the community. I think it's there where he discusses the difference between, maybe it's in a different article, but I know it's for sure in the book, where he discusses the difference between an action and a fulfillment of the mitzvah, and it's by tshuva. In other words, the mitzvah of tshuva, the Rambam says, is to do vidu. You have to admit your sin. Hashamnu bagadnu al chet. But the Rabbi says that's impossible to say that's the mitzvah. That's what he calls the maseh ha-mitzvah. How do you do the mitzvah? You do the mitzvah by admitting your sin. But the mitzvah is to do tshuva. The mitzvah is not to say al chet. The al chet is a mechanism. It's the action you do, but it's like what we might call in English the spirit of the law and the letter of the law. It's not exactly the same. The letter of the law, what do you have to do? There's a procedure how to do tshuva, but that's not the goal. The goal is to do tshuva. So the Rav gives other examples. Probably the best example is davening. That the maaseh ha-mitzvah, what do you have to do? How do you daven? How do you daven? You pull up a siddur and you start saying the words. That's not davening. That's not davening. That's the action of davening. That's the maaseh ha-mitzvah. You don't fulfill any mitzvah that way. The mitzvah is the kiyum ha-mitzvah, the fulfillment of the mitzvah, avodah shabalev. I'm worshiping God with my heart. It's a feeling you have. The Rav explains that by simcha. There's a mitzvah to be happy on Yom Kippur. So the Talmud says, how do you be happy? For most people, you drink wine, you eat meat, or you learn Torah. That's also a form of happiness. You give tzedakah. That's also a form of how we do our happiness of simcha. But those are methods, for sure, like eating meat and drinking wine. It's not the mitzvah to drink wine. Drinking wine will help you to be in a good mood. The Torah understood that. So the maaseh ha-mitzvah, there it says in the Shulchan Aruch, yeah, you should drink wine, you should eat meat, yeah, fine. Hey, well, you're vegetarian, it's a whole different story, fine. But that's not the kiyum ha-mitzvah. The kiyum mitzvah is to be happy. Rahman al-Itzlan avelut. It's the same way. It's not the mitzvah to sit on a low stool and to grow a beard and to rip your clothes. The mitzvah is to be very upset and sad and mourn. But we bring you action to do it. So that's a very important idea, and it's a very hard idea because I've mentioned many times we're so beholden to our siddur, this, that, and it's not supposed to be that way. You know what? Even though I don't have it there, let me just share my screen. I'm going to show you what the Rambam says because I think it's rather important, and I'm sure I've mentioned in the past, but you should see it inside. How the Rambam defines. Let me just go here. Sorry for taking me half a second. I didn't prepare this source in advance, but I should be able to get it quickly, I hope. The Rambam, we go to Halacha. This great Safari is amazing, of course. Mishnah Torah. We're going to prayer. Where are we going? Prayer and the priestly blessings. Okay, Perek Aleph. Okay. Mitzvah aseli palo b'chol yom. It's a mitzvah to daven every day. You have to worship God, and then he quotes our pasuk here, Dvarim Yud Aleph Yud Gimel. This is the second paragraph of Shema. Lavdo b'chol levavchem. Amru chachamim ezehu avodah shebalev. What's worship of the heart? Amru chachamim. So most people assume Amru chachamim means it's a rabbinic mitzvah. The Rambam is saying the rabbis are interpreting what the Bible meant. And the other commentaries say, okay, based on this verse, the rabbis instituted the notion of tefillah. But that's whether it's rabbinic or biblical, we follow the mitzvot anyway. But it's just kind of a fascinating thing to think that many people think it's only a rabbinic mitzvah. How often you daven? It's up to you. 1, 10, 5, doesn't matter. Vein mishnah tefillah azot min Torah, and the word, the form of the tefillah. We say, "Ve'ein the tefillah zman kavu." You can daven whenever you want. You pray; it doesn't matter. The fichach nashim v'avadim, woman, everybody's obligated to daven. It's mitzvah to say shaloas man grama. It's not dependent on time. The rabbi said you should daven at this time, but that's not the mitzvah. What's the mitzvah? You have to beseech God. You have to give His praise and say thank you. Magish shivcho v'chozer b'shoal trachav. You ask your needs and bakashat china, and then you give hoda'ah. That's the Shavach Bakasha Hoda'ah, the 3 parts of the Tefillah. Okay, if you are good, you're a good poet and you know what to say. Imaya Ragil Marbeh, you do a lot. You daven for a long time, many Tefillot. Imaya Real Svatayim, like it's interesting. That's Moshe Rabbeinu. If you're whatever, however you want to translate the Real Svatayim, not a great orator. You're not good at speech. You do whatever you can, whenever you're able to say a few words. Anybody according to their need. There's some people who pray once a day. Some people daven a lot. But you have to face the Beit HaMikdash. Rabbi Soloveitchik, the Rav, felt this is a biblical law. I believe Rabbi Ganak, when he built the shul, that's a story I heard in Englewood. A lot of, when I came to New York to YU, the YU original base measures faced north, I think, did not face east. Came to New York, a lot of shuls didn't face east. So we as Canadians would joke, New Yorkers feel that the whole world, the famous, poster of Fifth Avenue, and not 80% of the world is between like Fifth Avenue and the Hudson River and, the Atlantic Ocean, the rest of that famous New Yorker poster. So, New Yorkers, they don't have to dive into Israel. Okay, that's as young kids, we said that, but it's true. Architecturally, it's hard. Space in New York, so often they couldn't make it going east. But Rav Soloveitchik was very makbid, even though the YU base measures wasn't east. I think the new one is, but the old one wasn't east. And I believe that the Rav told Rabbi Kanak to rebuild the shul. They were in the middle of construction. The architect that built the plans at what's faced east. The Rav said, no, you got to, whatever it's going to cost, tell the architect to redo the plans that faced east. Notice how the Rambam puts it in like right away, like that went a lot, and like out of the blue. Like I wouldn't think that's the most important thing, but yes, you have to daven facing the Beit Hamikdash, and that's how it was until Ezra. Everybody davened when they wanted, how they wanted, as much they wanted. But when the Jewish people were exiled, 586 BCE, Nebuchadnezzar, and they got mixed up, they were Persians and Greece, Paras, Yavan, and Sharamot, and they had children, and born outside of Israel, and they they spoke, I hate to say it all, they spoke, English. They didn't speak any language properly. They nitbalbelu svatam. Language. It's I'm not a linguist, but we know language is many things mixed into it, and nobody knew how to speak Hebrew properly. Nobody could fully express themselves. Very interesting in one language. I don't know. It's a very hard to imagine what they couldn't speak Persian, perfect, like fluent Persian. I don't really know what he means, but that's what the Rambam says. They was mixed in. Like, I guess you say English got word from Latin, got word from Greece, maybe that. I don't know what he means, but something along those lines. Bishibush, it was all mixed up. They spoke Chatzimah de Berashtotitza. Half of them spoke this language, and this one couldn't communicate with him. There are 25 Chinese dialects. The French, people tell you that the French in Quebec is not like the same as the French in France. Okay. So nobody knew how to daven. And then Kelman Shara Ezra, when Ezra and his court, this is the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah, that's what we assume. Ezra's the founder of the Anshe Knesset Hagdolah. They established Shmona Esrei. Okay, here's what you do. Say 3 at the beginning, 3 at the end, and in the middle, you're going to ask for wealth and wisdom and forgiveness and repentance and all these other things. So but what you see from this Rambam, is that really the Siddur is, I don't say the Siddur is a bad thing, chas v'shalom, but there's a certain negativity about the Siddur. Ideal prayer. See, once you tell people what to say, it's no longer in the heart. We're focused on the mouth. We just have to read the words, and that's what I mean. That's not what prayer is about. That the Rambam is very clear. It was an unfortunate historical circumstance that led to the establishment of the Siddur, because we had no choice. Yes, if we tell people just pray, I wouldn't know what to say. We need it, but you have to. There's there's sort of a tension between avodah shebalev and a Siddur. And we have to just be aware of that tension and try to reconcile it to the best we can. And that's why I often say, I know, and in schools, they don't do this. In shuls, they don't do this, especially probably because of reform. And, it'd be like your reform if you do that. You don't have to say every word in the Siddur. It's okay. Say a fifth of the Siddur every day, and say it's 5 times as intently. The problem is, of course, we made it shorter, people would do it so that they wouldn't do the rest of the part with more kavana. They would just, daven a lot quicker. That's always the problem. But I think in schools, there's a real opportunity, especially younger kids, to daven much less, to rotate the davening and to daven the same amount of time, but just with much more understanding. And then if the kid in grade 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 goes through the tefillah like that, like I said, he'll know it off by heart because he'll do a small amount. You'll say the whole thing out loud. Like in the Sparta community, he'll understand what he's saying, and they'll grow up to daven a lot better than often we do. Anyways, so that's, but the idea to pray comes from according to the Rambam, comes from our verse in the Shema, to worship God with our heart and that's how to worship God. The Siddur is a mechanism to get our hearts working, but the Siddur is not the be-all and end-all of our tefillah. That's very clear. Okay, now back to what am I talking? Why am I talking about this? I guess it's interesting, but why now? Because the individual and our community. So it's interesting. I'm going to go with the theme. We're going to explain a few things on the theme that the second paragraph of Shema is talking about our communal mitzvot. That's how Rashi says. The first paragraph is the individuals. The second paragraph, Bayam Shemo, the repetition is to our community. So this to me, I don't know, maybe I'm taking it too far, but this to me is an allusion to the Ramban's view. We've mentioned many times because I think it's so important and so beautiful and so hard. The Ramban's view, who disagrees with the Rambam. The Rambam writes, it's the fifth mitzvah. You know, the Rambam wrote the 613 mitzvot. He listed them all. I've mentioned, we don't have an agreed upon list. No two rabbis agree because the Talmud never establishes it. There's a whole debate whether it's really true. There's 613 mitzvot for another time. But so the Rambam is his introduction to the Mishnah Torah. The Rambam's Mishnah Torah that I just quoted from the Laws of Prayer, there is really an explication of the 613 mitzvot. That's what the Rambam does. So in every section, he tells you how many mitzvot there are in every section. Because what the Rambam is doing in the Mishnah Torah is telling you what the 613 mitzvot, telling you all the laws. So he first wrote a book to tell you what are the 613 mitzvot. And he had a big problem because we have 5 million mitzvot. 613 mitzvot, and got 5,000 mitzvot in Shabbos. There are 39 malachot. Aren't those 39 mitzvot? No, the Rambam says only one mitzvah, not to do malach. It's 39 details of one mitzvah. So the Rambam had to figure out, and there's you can spend the next 25 years reading essays and articles and scholarship and learning about the Rambam's Sefer HaMitzvot. It's you look today for mitzvot. I'm not at home. I can't pull it out, but a little bit, and the commentaries on the side, how we figured out. So the Ramban is one of the most famous commentaries on the Rambam. So the Rambam, and then there's a whole theory, the order of the Rambam. The Sefer HaChinuch just goes to Parshat HaShavua. He does the same 613 as the Rambam. Sefer HaChinuch just followed the Rambam, but he put it to the Parsha of the week. What the Rambam doesn't do that. The Rambam, he made up a whole system. It's not the first ones we discussed this, I think, a while ago. The first ones are easy. Belief in God. There's one God. God is unified. You have to love God. I think those are the first 4. Number 5 is you have to pray to God. So pretty important. You can see already. And then it's how the Rambam figures out. So mitzvah number 5 in the Rambam is you have to pray. You have to daven. And the Ramban, it's interesting. The Ramban says no, it's not a mitzvah. As we said, it's not a mitzvah. It's a gemilut chesed. It's an act of kindness that God allows us. It's such a beautiful Ramban. That's why I repeat it all the time. Can you imagine if we took prayer? Most people, it's hard. Prayer's a burden. I went to this morning, 6:45 million. You got to get up early. It's hard. It's not always so easy to be inspired. But the Ramban says it's an act of kindness that God allows us to approach Him in prayer. But the Ramban has one exception. The Ramban has one exception that in an 8 sarah, in a time of need like we are now, unfortunately, tefillah becomes a biblical mitzvah with a minyan, with a minyan. That because you have to gather the people. But here, look. Let me quickly. I think I have it open. If not, get it open. Right. This is the parshiot in Baalotcha. Where are we here? I can't see it. Maybe I don't have it here. Oh, here's positive mitzvah. This is what I was talking about before. Here on Safari, they don't have the whole thing, but number 5, you see the 5 here? This is the Rambam Sefer Mitzvot, the short version, Lipalelo. After daven v'avartam Hashem avoda shebalei. If you heard their quote, okay. Then you have to cling to God is number 6. You have to swear in His name. All the first ones are about our relationship to God. You have to sanctify His name. Then you have to read Shema. It's interesting how the Rambam does it. But anyways, okay, we won't do that now. Here, if you go here to Dvarim, not Dvarim, what am I doing? But Midbar 10. Why is this not opening? I don't know why it's not opening. Numbers 10. Shtei chatzotrot, it's like sort of like our shofar. Okay, this chatzor and the shofar went together. The chatzor are not shofar, but they're always blown together. And we learn parts of Hilchot shofar from here. Do katem truah, blow the truah, right? And when you gather the people, when you gather the people, you do a tekiah. gets you're confident. The trua is you're fearful. It's a broken sound. It's crying. When the nation comes together, tekiah, confident, proud sign, unbroken sign. The trua is when things are not so good. That's why we surround the shvarim and the trua, which are forms of crying. The Gemara says, with the tekiah, which is the sign of confidence. So God forbid, when there's a war in your country, again, it's a trua, and you should be remembered before God. So this, the Ramban says, this is the mitzvah to pray with a minyan, because you're gathered together. The nation has to come together, and then, of course, in our joyous occasions, etc. So the Ramban basically, normally you don't have to daven, but in an Eitz Hara you have to daven, and you have to daven with the minyan. So I just find it interesting. Oh boy, we learned it from the second paragraph of the Shema, which is talking about our community. Whether I'm stretching it a little bit, but the point is true that the source of tefillah that the Rambam quotes this and one other source, but is a communal source, because prayer is really, ideally, prayer is with the minyan, and I've meant many times not to answer Baruch Hu and Kedusha. Those are our bonus. The reason we daven with a minyan is because God hears our tefillot more with the minyan, because we as individuals are nobodies. We as a community are everything. The Jewish people are eternal individuals. We sin, we're sinners, but Klal Yisrael, and that's always our claim. And that's part of the Rav's famous essay when we do tshuva, mentioned before, says the vidui, the al-chet that the individual says on Yom Kippur is at the end of our tefillah. We don't have the chutzpah in the middle of our tefillah to ask God to forgive us. Who are we to ask God to forgive us? Are you crazy? Sinners that we are, the lashon hara, everything we do. So after we finish davening, I finished davening. You know what? I better mention it. I have no choice, otherwise I'm finished. So after we say Shalom, we sort of approach God. That's why the Chazan begins on Rosh Hashanah from the back of the room, Hamelech, very quietly, and then he gets because he's nervous. Who am I to approach God, the King of the universe, Hamelech? That's we start on Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur. So the Chazan's at the back of the shul. He's still nervous. I have no right to approach God. Okay, we have no choice, so we do it. Our community comes together. So the individual says tshuva al-chet way at the end. The tzibur, it's right in the middle. In Chazar, Shuts in the bracha of Kedusha Hayom, we say right in the middle, because we're very confident, and we sing. That's the Reb Sullivan. Shamnu. That's a very happy tune. We're very excited because God is going to forgive us as a community. So when we come together, the real mitzvah of prayer, not to answer Kedusha, is to daven Shmona Esrei silently, so you can still have the heart, right? That's why we daven Shmona Esrei silently, because don't be beholden to the Siddur. So the rabbis say you have to say all these themes. Okay, so you have to talk about wisdom and wealth and health and peace and justice. Beautiful. But add your own stuff. Don't be beholden to the words of the Siddur. I know that sounds radical, but that's what real tefillah is. And that's why Jewish people have said, halacha says, you're not allowed to daven the Shemona Esrei out loud, because everybody has the opportunity to privately. So that's where we have the tension plays out, or that's where we give the individual a chance to do avodah shabalev within the fixed structure of the Shemona Esrei. We do it privately, so you'll have an opportunity to express your own personal needs and wants. Okay, that's one thing. That's tefillah from the second paragraph. Now, the main theme, of course, of the second paragraph is reward and punishment. That's Vaya im Shamo. The first paragraph, nothing reward. You should love God, and you should worship God, and you should teach Torah to your children, and have a mezuzah in your house, and wherever you go, you should be talking in Torah. Beautiful. It's very beautiful, but there's no reward and punishment. Oh, Vaya im Shamoa. If you listen, it's going to be great. Hishamru lachem. Be very careful, because if you don't listen, you guys are finished. And again, it's talking to our community. You'll be exiled. That's not an individual punishment. That's a communal punishment. So it's very interesting. I just saw, and it reminded me of a second commentary. In other words, what the second parsha. This was in the Siddur Otzer Tefillot that we mentioned last week. I mentioned all the time. I've actually tried very briefly, and I have to spend more time, a little bit more research on the development that Siddur. But anyway, so in the Siddur Otzer Hatfilot, he quotes why are the mitzvot all repeated, right? How we started our shir. So many mitzvot, half of the second paragraph is the first paragraph. So he also develops this theme that the individual and our community. But what he says in a very interesting way. He says what the Torah wants is the Torah wants that we have to do our mitzvot b'tzibur. In other words, and he specifically mentions Torah, basically Torah Boda Ugemilut Chasadim have to be done b'tzibur. It's not enough to learn Torah on your own. You have to teach Torah. You have to spread Torah. It's not your Torah. It's not enough even the worship about your own avoda. So just how you're going to relate. You should worship of how our community can relate to God. Don't sit in your Dalit Amud in the corner and forget everybody else. The Rav Soloveitchik develops that at great length. And when I was talking about, in Ala Tshuva, Bein Hatzibur Liyachid, it's quite powerful how, the deeply devoted religious person who ignores society, that's very bad. Really, he's not really part of culture. It's very harsh. The Rav is actually quite harsh. It's basically, Ibn Ezra says it, Ulai yesh chamishim tzadikim last week, betoch ha'ir, in the midst of the city. If they're sitting in the kollel and totally divorced from the city, then who cares? They have no influence on Stom. But if there are even 10 people in the middle of Wall Street, who are showing to be righteous people as they make investment deals or they learn Torah at lunch or whatever they do, that influence the whole city. Then they can save those cities. Got to be betocha here, because the Rambam says. Here, I'll show you this Rambam. It's listen, I'm doing all this stuff. I don't have it here. Give me a second. It's really an amazing Rambam, and that's what the Siddur Otzer Tefillah develops this theme. So let's just go here. Let's go. What did I say I wanted to do? Hold on. What Rambam did I want to look up? Now I forget. Hold on. Oh, yeah. In Hilchot Tshuva. Okay, that's where the Rambam is. Okay. Just let me take a quick look. It's rather amazing. I'm sure some of you may, probably, you've learned Hilchot Tshuva, so you'll see repentance. So the Rambam lists the 24 people who lose their share in the world to come. The Rambam has a whole list and people who lose their share in the world to come. And the Rambam here is discussing, I think it's in chapter 3, it might be chapter 4, but I'm pretty sure it's chapter 3. Okay, so these are the people who lose their share in the world to come. Kofrim, Parhesia, whatever, we don't have, this is not the time to go through it. Okay. But Porshim Midarchet Sibur. Very interesting. Someone who separates himself from the community is one of the people who has no share in the world to come. Now, that's very nice. What does it mean? So the Rambam lists them off, and then he explains who are minim, who are apikorsim. Okay, very nice. And then the Rambam keeps going, and the Rambam says, Machtiye Rambim, haporish midarchit tzibur. Alpha pi shalo avar averot. He's very pious. He doesn't sin. But he sits in the corner. He doesn't participate in Jewish people. He doesn't do mitzvah with everybody else. They have their own little place. He doesn't. The problems of the Jewish people are not my problems. Our community is wonderful. I can't worry about the 75% intermarriage rate in the Jewish world. That's not my problem. It's their problem. He doesn't fast when they're fasting. It's like he's not even part of our community. I don't know. That's a ein lo chelech l'olam haba. See, there the Rambam is saying like he's acting almost like a non-Jew, but the Rav developed this in this notion of he was really, it seems pretty obvious, talking about communities where people are very religious, but they're not concerned about the rest of the community. And the Rambam says it. So that's that's Poresh Midarchit Tzibur. The Rambam says you lose your share in the world to come. This is like powerful. Now I know the Rambam's very controversial. The Rambam going after, but the Rambam never minces words. And listen, the Rambam held that taking money to learn Torah or even to teach Torah, you lose your share in the world to come. And we're not. Rabbi Moshe said you're not allowed to follow that Rambam. It's a different world today. But okay, but it's important note. So the Otzer Tefillah Siddur says that the second paragraph of Shema is telling us we have to do the mitzvot b'tzibur. I don't exactly. So again, you have to teach Torah to everybody. You have to be worried about our community. Do gemilut chesed, not just to your own community, to everybody else. So in other words, that's why the mitzvot are repeated. Even the way, I don't know, our mezuzah tefillah, I don't exactly know how you do that bit sibur as opposed to biyachid, but the idea that the mitzvot have a communal aspect. It's not just you doing the mitzvot, it's your doing it. Listen, you want to call it the call to kiruv, whatever you want to call it. But that's where dividing the mitzvot are different than when you daven at home, you daven mitzvah or the whatever. It's the different type of mitzvot. Okay. Any questions, comments? You don't have to. If you don't like what I'm saying, let me know. You don't agree. Okay. Now let's just. Sure, Zev. Yes.
How do you interpret this? And then he says, if you have other gods, I will kick you out of the land. What measurement does he take? Like, is it majority or anyone? Because look what happened in Sodom.
That's a very good question. Okay, let's wait probably till next week, please God.
Yeah,
okay,
but look what happened in Sodom. In Sodom, he doesn't punish the Rishoyim, even if there's 10 righteous.
Right. So first of all, there's a big machloket. What exactly was Avram praying for in Sodom? It's a little bit the standard, and I think most commentaries assume that God was going to, at least for sure, that's how Avram understood it. God was going to kill everybody. The righteous were going to die because of the majority not righteous. So Avram says, you're going to kill the righteous with that's not fair. Maybe there are 50 people in the city. Now, who's Avram praying for? Is Avram praying to save the 50 people because God was going to wipe out everybody? No, some say that. There are some who say that. I have to be. Some of the commentaries, Torah is ambiguous always, and it's so some commentaries say, of course, God did. Avram didn't care wipe out Sodom. They're evil people. That's not the way that's the way it's normally understood. That's the way most understand it. But some understand it that Avram was just praying to save the righteous, and because they were going to kill. Now some say God had zero intention to kill the righteous. Obviously, he was never going to kill the righteous. The whole debate was about saving the wicked. And some say God was going to kill everybody. And the whole debate was the 10, 20, 30, but people should save everybody. So it's kind of interesting. But there is a notion, yes, that it does, that we are responsible one for another. It's it's such a beautiful laning. That's Parsha Nitzavim. Hanistarot Lashem Elokeinu. The hidden sins are for God. Haniklot. We see people causing dissension in our community, causing machloket, and you do not. We see sin, and you do nothing about it. You're responsible. The kashlu ish bavona achiv. I forget what that pasuk is in the Torah. We fail. We are punished for the sins of our brethren. How far do you carry that? How does that apply in a modern society? Of course, it's a totally different equation, like, where our whole attitude towards non-observance. That's what I was saying at the beginning. I see somebody wrote a comment. What do you say? That is American perspective. I think you're talking about not to mix in on the personal mitzvot. Back in the day in Europe, that type of didn't work. Yeah. So I think that's just incorrect. I mean, it's correct, but it's incorrect. In other words, there was a time in 500 years ago, in time of the Gemara, when you were Machal Shabbos, you were making a statement that I have nothing to do with Judaism. I hate Judaism. I don't believe in God, and that's why I'm a Machal Shabbos. And therefore, if the Gemara says you're considered like an idol worshiper, and you don't count towards a minyan. Today, that's ridiculous. What are you, nuts? Nobody normal says that. The Binyan Sion changed Jewish history. He was the first one, the first great Gadol B'Torah. Rabbi Yaakov Ettlinger, in 1861, writes one of them, I think one of the three most important tshuvas of the last 500 years, where he says our whole attitude towards non-religious Jews has to change. Because he says, what I talk about, they go to shul on Shabbos and then they go to work. Well, we would call, in 1861, they weren't driving, but they drive to shul. So what are you going to tell me? He doesn't believe in God. He doesn't care about our community. He hates Judaism. That's ridiculous. Or as Rav Lichtenstein said, what, you're going to tell somebody in Albuquerque, in Dallas, not to drive to shul? Obviously, you want them to drive to shul. Where should they drive to? At the golf course? That's ridiculous. So our whole attitude has changed because sinning is different today. And even I believe, from what I understand, the non-observant Jews don't even like the term Tinok Shenishba. That used to be common. They're Tinok Shenishba. It's not their fault. There are children taken care of that they were brought up not religious. Nebuch, they don't know, and we have to teach them. They don't like that. A lot of Jews, no, I'm not Nebuch. I'm a Reformed Jew on principle. I'm not a Nebuch. I'm not a Tinoch Shenishba. I know exactly what I'm doing. So I don't have to agree with them, but I'm not going to denigrate them. Just if anybody listens, I started a new podcast, on the Parsha. Maybe you can listen. You don't have to listen. It's 8-9 minutes. So that's what I spoke about a little bit this week. You don't denigrate. We live in a different society. The Chazon Ish, not a modern Orthodox rabbi. The Chazon Ish, the founder of Haredi Judaism in Israel, if you want to say that. And although it's gone more to extreme than when he was, but anyways, he dies in 1953. The Chazon Ish says even a Jew who grows up in a religious home, who has a yeshiva education, who becomes not religious, we don't attach all these negative comments on the Gemara to such a person, because we live in a society where being not religious is normal. We don't have any miracles anymore. We don't have any, and it's just normal. We live in a secular society. So even a yeshiva educated kid, a lot of them are going to become not religious, and we shouldn't throw the book at them like they're terrible people. The same way, would anybody sit shiva for someone who intermarried, their kid who intermarried? That would be terrible, awful. I mean, I maybe in Satmar that makes sense. Okay, I understand. But in a normal family, that would be terrible. Mark Shapiro has mentioned to me, I don't know if it's in print, but he's told me more than once, somebody approached the Sri Deyesh, that's what he did, his doctorate on, Rabbi Yechiel Yaakov Weinberg, one of the great poskim of, dies in the 60s, survived the war, the Ilui, the head of the Hildesheimer Rabbinical Seminary, Ilui in Slobodka, and his son was intermarrying. What should he do? So the Sri Deyesh told him, you go to the wedding. Wow, you go to the wedding. It's like a total different world, because society is totally different. So our attitude is saying, so you're right. In these, so I think unfortunately today we have a lot of Jews who take this European attitude. Oh, he's a sinner, a kaifer, terrible. The Reform are terrible. We're going to hate them. No, halavai, we should have more Reformed Jews. I know that's not a popular thing to say, but as opposed to what, a Jew who does nothing, who's on the beach on Rosh Hashanah. Where do I want a Jew on Rosh Hashanah? At the beach in Tel Aviv or in a Reform shul? There's no shaila where he should be. I know, and I know that's not what people are taught necessarily. I think that's, I don't know, maybe, what can I tell you? What can I tell you? I think what I'm saying is totally rooted, at least in the thought of like all the, the poskim I look up to, even Rav Soloveitchik. See, that's the problem, because in the 50s, Rabbi Soloveitchik had his famous comment that is totally taken out of context and totally misquoted, that it's better to stay at home than to go to a conservative shul on Rosh Hashanah without the mechitza. That's the famous thing the Rav said. So it's true. The Rav said it, first of all, but that's why Rav Lichtenstein is correcting him. He's saying, today, of course, I would tell a Jew to drive to shul in Albuquerque or Dallas. The Rav was talking to his nephew, Moshe Meiselman, who's now the Rosh Yeshiva in Torah Moshe. I believe that's who he was talking to. And he was telling his nephew in the 50s, in the height of the war between the conservative reform movement, which is different today, totally, then in his particular situation, he should better daven at home. But the Rav would never tell a conservative Jew, stay at home and don't go to a conservative shul. The Rav wasn't stupid. He understood. His best friend almost was Rabbi Shubo. Read the letters he wrote. Read how he praises this left-wing conservative rabbi. It was his best friend in Boston. They were super close. And the Rav writes how amazing he is for his community and for the Jewish community. The Rav is saying, for an Orthodox Jew, it's better to daven. Okay, Beseder, fine. You can argue with that too, by the way. People today don't argue with that, but one could, when you shouldn't hear shofar in a conservative shul if you have no choice. But I think in the historical context, the Rav was saying it in a time when the Reform, when that was a huge issue, where Orthodox shul after Orthodox shul was becoming conservative. So the Rav laid the line in the sand. Oh, mechitza, you're out of here. But the Rav understood that the Rav said you can join Synagogue Council of America, or Orthodox rabbis should work with Reform rabbis, just not on theological issues. We differ theologically, Beseder, but we're Jews together. We work together. That's the mitzvah. They quote one sentence out of the Rav and apply it there. It's ridiculous. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be so strong, but I think it is very important to Klal Yisrael. I've spoken of this in many contexts. Morris, you want to say something?
Yeah, you mentioned Rabbi Meisman, and given the Rambam you just read, Rabbi Meisman, I read on a website, gave psak to the Haredi community not to say the Tefillah Shalom
Listen,
HaChayalim.
I don't want to. Listen. I don't want to go there. Exactly. I don't. I'll tell you something from before now. Now I think it's too. We're binyanim. Halavai should pass. But I heard Rabbi Riskin with my. I don't know what he says, and I told they are saying Tehillim even in many Haredi yeshivas. I don't want to. This is going to shake up. I mean, it's shaking up the whole Jewish world. I mean, everybody. What's going to be? Who knows? I was talking to a good friend of mine yesterday in Israel. He's a political analyst and a frum guy and very interesting. I mean, he says the day the war ends, he will be with 1 million people on the street demanding the entire government resign. And the elections, he's on the right. He's more to the right than I am politically, whatever. And he says there's going to be total shakeup, but it depends what happens. It depends nobody knows what the conclusion is going to be. But the Haredi world is going to perhaps undergo great change because of this, or at least parts of the Haredi world. So I don't know, but Rabbi Riskin, I heard it from Rabbi Riskin many years ago, said he asked Rav Nathan Zvi Finkel, I don't know the first name, the one, the Rosh Yeshiva in Mir, with the Finkel family, but the more recent, he passed away a number of years ago. The most recent Rosh Yeshiva was, he went to Ida Crown in Chicago. He was, a descendant. He went at a modern Orthodox, and if he lived in Chicago, Ida Crown is like a very, it's like Ramaz or Frisch, I don't know, SAR, sort of in that world. I don't exactly know, but that's the school he went to. And he was I know he spoke to Americans, said, who played on their basketball team? And then he raised his hand, he has a long white beard, Haredi looking, and he said, yeah, I played on the basketball team at Ida Crown Jewish Academy, in Chicago. And then he went to Israel and he became very learned and, he moved hashkafically. And so I think Rabbi Riskin spoke to him once. So why don't you say Tefillah L'Shem HaMedina? Like, someone who grew up, you understand. He said, he can't do it for Tzahal, because if he says for Tzahal, it could be somebody's going to, if I remember correctly, maybe it's a little, but I remember, Rabbi, I can't do it. I agree it should be done, but I'm nervous that people are going to become too close to the army, and maybe someone will leave the yeshiva and join the army. I don't know. So my understanding is they say their own tefillot, but they have difficulty saying tefillot made up by the rabbinate. Whatever. Obviously, we don't agree with that, but I don't want to criticize if they're saying their tefillot and whatever. It's hard. It's hard. It's the most important thing is to not to have machloket. The same way I'm think Reform Judaism, there's much positive values and tremendous things, even though I don't agree with their hashkafa. The same thing in the Haredi world. They have many wonderful, fantastic things we can learn from. Yes, I don't like some of the things they do. What can I tell you? But now, God forbid without all community. We'll see what happens. We should do what we can to unite Klal Yisrael. I don't know what to say. I don't know if that answers the question.
I have a
Yeah, Marty, what do you want to ask?
It changed the subject. You
Good
talk,
to change our subject. Yeah, good.
you talked about davening with a million.
Yeah.
I stopped to walk right before COVID. And before I used to when I used to walk, I went to show every morning. My question is from the idea that you should davening with a keyboard. My question is there any value for me from a halakhic or hashkafic point of view to daven with Zoom during the week?
Okay, yeah. So it's very interesting. I was in Riverdale last night. My son lived in Riverdale. I haven't been to Riverdale for Shabbos in at least 38 years. And there was for Simon Store, we're going to be Shabbos there. So we slept last night. So this morning I went to daven at, I said, at the 645 Minyan at the Hebrew Institute of Riverdale. So now, that's Rabbi Weiss's shul. I mean, originally, so I've never been there. I mean, I think I was in the building once. I went in and I see they have a minyan, 35 people, whatever. And then there's the guy in front of me is on his computer, and there are a bunch of people on Zoom who were saying Kaddish and what, or davening, whatever, but some of them were also saying Kaddish with the people in the shul. There were one or two people in the shul saying Kaddish. And then I told me they have a 750. They don't call it a minyan. It was very interesting. Just this morning, I was a little bit kind of surprised. They still have a 750. They said it's not a minyan, but our second minyan, our second tefillah is at 750, only on Zoom. In other words, it's not in person. The in-person minions is 645, 750s on Zoom. I said, wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, they're committed to it. I guess there are people come. I just found it very fascinating. Is there, a room I think I discussed last week, it killed the conservative movement. They made the fatal mistake of broadcasting Zoom on Shabbos. That means nobody has to go to shul anymore. That at the time, it made a lot of sense. And I remember at the time, I don't want to quote who he is, but it's somebody who teaches often for Torah and Ocean. You all know him, but I'm not going to quote his name, although he probably wouldn't mind. But I remember at the beginning of COVID, he said that, of course, you ask a Rav, can you use Zoom on Shabbos and, all this stuff? Of course, the answer is no. But a Gadol Yisrael would tell you the answer is yes. If we had real Gedolim, the Gadol would understand the importance of community, even by Zoom. So I don't know. I think maybe now that's not so true. It was true maybe for a while, but the problem is once the conservative movement started, they can't put the genie back in the bottle. I don't know. But is there? Listen, I think there is something to it. Yes, it's learning Torah and Zoom. We didn't have so much Torah and Zoom before this. It's a community, but it's not the same thing. It's not the same thing as being in person. I remember right when Zoom, right as the pandemic was sort of ending. It's not. I don't know if it ever totally ends.
But I have no church. I live in a building with stairs. Okay, last week I went in a car for the first time in about 4 months, So my point is, my question is, if you have the option.
Right. You have to have the option. I don't think Zoom, I think it's better, to daven in person. Everything is better. Zoom has many wonderful advantages, whatever, but people like camaraderie. Like it's not the same. It was interesting. I had Jonathan Ziering, Rabbi Jonathan Ziering, he spoke first of a young, really amazing Talmid Chacham, young in his early 30s, really an Eloi. And so he gave a shiur. There's a halakha, if you haven't seen a friend for a month or for a year, you make a special bracha. That's a question how we apply it today, especially in ancient times. You didn't know if they were alive. You just haven't seen someone in a year. You're so happy to see your friend. You say a shechayanu or machaya meitim even on times, if I'm not mistaken. I think sometimes a shechayanu. So the question he was discussing, if you saw somebody on Zoom, does that count? And he said, what's a bracha? And the whole shiur was there was a whole shiur that we see Zoom is not the same. People were excited to go back to shul. Many people want kiddush. They want this socialization. Zoom is fantastic. We wouldn't have the shiur without Zoom. Thank you very much for all coming. But if I gave the shiur in Toronto at Friday morning, 9:15, so Morris maybe would come. He lives 2 blocks from me. Zeb, I don't know if Zeb would come. I mean, I can list off all the Torontonians online. So it's phenomenal. But you need both. I think you need both, and I think it's nice for people who can't come to shul. I think it's tremendous for older people. It's hard to get out. Yes, that the shul can conduct. There's a minyan going on in shul being watching Zoom. I think that's an amazing thing. I think that is beautiful, and I think that should keep. What to do on Shabbos? Okay, that's a different question. I don't have to tell you in 2020, if you remember. Rav Schachter gave some very lenient psakim in terms of calling people. Remember that first Pesach of 2020 was a 3-day yontiv. It was mamish 6 weeks after, 5 weeks after the world turned upside down. People were you were nervous to go within 100 feet of some people were dying left and right. And what to do that first Pesach. So everybody had to stay there alone. You remember, it's a long time ago. But so people don't want to remember that. They have the starim alone. What do? You have your elderly parents, 85 years old. Who knows if they're well? So you can keep Zoom on. Rav Schachter, all these, psukim, how to deal with it. Yeah, it's a little bit of pikuach nefesh, we're very machmir in pikuach nefesh, so anyways, but okay, it's already 10. I didn't even cover like 10%, well, maybe 10% what I wanted to do, but okay, Baruch Hashem, that's good. I hope so. We do what we can, but let me at least raise the issue that I wanted to focus on today, and we'll pick it up next week. I said the second paragraph is on reward and punishment. If you keep the mitzvot, so yes, you asked that before. Yes, there is an idea that, especially in communal punishment, that the righteous will suffer with the wicked. When the exile, the righteous people will be exiled with the non-righteous people. The righteous people died, the Holocaust, all these things. Whatever I'm not saying the Holocaust is a punishment, but we understand when bad things happen, we don't distinguish between the righteous and the non-righteous. That's just the way the world works. So, and the Torah does place some responsibility, especially on the leaders. Listen, Egla Arufa, the whole law of Egla Arufa is that the elders of the city are responsible when somebody's killed in the city. What do they do? Is it possible to believe, right? They have to say, we didn't kill this person, the famous quote of the rabbis. What, are you crazy? Do you actually think the rabbis murdered somebody? No, but you know what? They didn't escort him to his hotel room. How do you let somebody walk on the street? They give him enough food. They didn't welcome him to that. It's an amazing level of responsibility. To be a leader of the Jewish people is a real high level of responsibility. And yes, so we punished, and Ari Miklat, and we wait for the guy until the Kohen Gadol dies. What did the Kohen Gadol do? It's a punishment. He's a leader. The leaders have to create a society where things can't happen, where you have to create a society where there are no car accidents. What Ari Miklat is it's an accident, right? So no, what do you mean an accident? There's no accidents. Every accident is negligence. It's just the lower level of negligence, right? So you have to create a society where people drive, they keep one car distance for every 10 miles an hour, like they teach you when you're driving, 2 seconds on the highway between the car right? And you have to keep the speed low. Okay, there won't be any car accidents. So that's the responsibility of the leader. So if the Kohen Gadol, the spiritual leader, if somebody died accidentally, they're going to go to the army and they're going to daven for the Kohen Gadol to die. That's what it says. Of course they're going to daven for the Kohen. You're normal. You're in jail. You can't leave the Ari Miklat. You're in jail. You want to get out. So you're going to pray the Kohen Gadol should die. How do I know people prayed that? Because it says in the Mishnah that the mothers of the Kohen Gadol would bake cake. It's such a beautiful, such an amazing thing. The mothers of the Kohen Gadol would bake cakes to give to all the people in the Ari Miklat. Don't pray for my son to die because you won't get this great food. Like, I'm a great cook, and every week you get fresh.
Another thing with that also, when Aaron was nifter, it says Vayivku Kol Beis Yisrael, and the question is why Kol? Because everybody. Right. Because, and what did they prove from that? They proved from that there was no murder b'shogeg in that generation, so nobody was praying for the Kohen Gadol to die, and everyone was happy.
I didn't hear. Okay, that's interesting. Is that a medrash somewhere? I know Aaron was more beloved. He was an Oev Shalom, a Rodeh Shalom. But
they say also that they bring that as proof that there was no Ritzicha b'shogeg then, because there was no one praying for him to die. Everyone was sad. Everyone mourned his death.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Very good. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So what the subject will start with next week, will be what kind of rewards the Torah it's going to rain. I don't know that we consider that such a great reward, but it's going to rain. What happened to the spiritual rewards of Torah? So we'll pick up on this theme and hopefully a lot more. Next week we'll develop this whole idea that reward and punishment. That's the key of the second paragraph. And Zev, hopefully I will get to discuss your question a little bit more about being thrown off on the land, etc. Because you just mute yourself. Okay, yeah. Okay, all right, so let's quickly just review what we discussed. We end up discussing a lot about prayer. Prayer is only according to the Rambam is prayer a biblical mitzvah, and even the Rambam's prayer of a biblical mitzvah is very little. The way we daven today is for sure just a rabbinic mitzvah, and we saw in the Rambam how that developed, and there's the tension between non-fixed prayer. We don't want fixed prayer. We want it when you want. That's the ideal. but it doesn't work. It may be work. The Rambam seems to say it worked until Ezra. When people were living in Israel, that system did work. And probably he doesn't say it, but it's probably tied into Korbanot, played a greater role. Tefillot is not exactly replacement of Korbanot, but it's Keneged Korbanot. It's aligned with Korbanot. It's not the replacement exactly. It's not that we first had Korbanot, now we daven. There was davening with Korbanot, but still they are connected. And I would imagine during the temple time, Korbanot played a more central role, and prayer a less central role. It's also part of the equation going on. But that tension is why we have a silent, Shemon Esrei, but we're trying to show that Tefillah B'tzibur is the essence of Tefillah. And that's why I loved Avodah Shabalev. That's why it's in the second paragraph of the Shema, not the first paragraph. And we talked about the difference between a Kiyuma mitzvah and a Maseh mitzvah, right? How do you daven? You daven by picking up the Siddur and saying words, but that's the Maseh, that's the action. That's not what davening is. The Kiyuma mitzvah, the fulfillment, is in the heart, just like the fulfillment of Simcha is to be happy on Yom Tov, not to drink wine and eat meat, or Tshuva. It's not to bang your heart and say Al Chay. That's the mechanics of Tshuva, but the fulfillment of Tshuva is to be a different person. So that's basically pretty much what we're focusing on. And there are different methods to come close to God. And the importance at the end is that Tzibur is to focus on the communal aspects and the individual. That's between man and God, especially I would say in our time, right? Our attitude. There was a time when a Jew who violated the Shabbat, that was a terrible thing. Like intermarriage used to be in Fiddler on the Roof. I told them, they sat Shiva 150 years ago. That made sense because a Jew who intermarried was a big statement, and they knew it and you knew it. Everybody knew intermarriage was the way out. Today it's not true. Today, I teach non-religious kids, and a lot of these kids, I thank God, the vast majority are going to marry Jews. All the research shows they go to day school, they're going to marry Jews, even if they're not religious. But a lot of them, theoretically, what's wrong with intermarriage? You fall in love with the idea that you can't marry who you love is so anti-Western. Like if you're not religious, so why? I can, and then you have people say, my parents, I know my parents intermarried. Why not? I can be Jewish within. It's like. That's the attitude today. So our attitude, that's the reality today. So our attitude has to change about how we do the individuals. That's what the Chazon Ish said already, even religious people, etc., etc. And that's important tshuva, the Binyan Sion, that today you can express your Judaism, and even if you're a Machal Shabbos, but you're showing you do believe in God, you do care about Yiddishkeit. And that's why I think today it's so important. We should work all together. The problem is the assimilated Jew, not the Jew going to a reform shul. Yeah, okay, so we can try to learn with them, talk to them. The real problem is the 70% of Jews who don't go to shul on Yom Kippur, not the Jew who goes to reform shul on Yom Kippur. The 70%, and then we mentioned many times the Baal Tshuva movement is statistically in trouble. The Baal Tshuva movement is much less robust than it used to be, because as the conservative movement dies, the Baal Tshuva movement dies, because that's where the Baal Tshuva are not coming from the people, very rarely coming from people of zero Jewish education. It's coming from the kid who had a bar mitzvah, they went to shul 3 times a year, but they didn't take Judaism so seriously. He gets turned on in college. Beseder, beautiful. It's not coming from the Jew who doesn't go to shul on Yom Kippur, very rarely. So I'm not saying that's the reason, but even from that practical point of view. Anyway, so we have to work together with all Jews, even assimilated Jews, do whatever they can. Everybody wants to come to Washington. I don't know how many people are planning to go to Washington this week. All Jews, and it's nice, even if I understand, I saw in the paper the other day, the Aguda is asking people to go, which is very rare for them. They don't normally do things like this. And Peace Now is asking people to go. So I think that's a beautiful thing, that the unity of Klal Yisrael should be seen in Shemaim, and God should hear our tefillot for good because of that. They're coming from the religious, not religious, right-wing, left-wing, middle, we're all Jews together. And sometimes it takes the Goyim to remind us that the Goyim don't care about our stupid, he's modern Orthodox light, and he's right-wing modern Orthodox, he's left-wing a good. The Goyim don't care about that stuff. They don't care about that stuff. So we should care a little bit less, certain things, but don't go crazy like everybody else. Okay, you don't have to agree with me, but let me just take the questions very quickly. Good morning. This morning we'll bring promise of nature's many wonders. Okay, autumn. Yeah, it is beautiful. Okay, the American perspective. Yeah, you know what? But even if that were to be true, I'm saying that American perspective, halacha lives in America. That's why the halacha. Rav Shachter would always tell us, you can't ask a shaila to poskim in Israel if you live in America. No, the halacha is the intersection between a never-changing Torah and an ever-changing real world. That's the Torah never changes, but the world changes. Halakha is how to apply Torah to the real world. So where you are in the real world will affect halakha. So yes, in America, one thing can be allowed, and in Israel not, and vice versa. That's so having an American perspective doesn't mean the halakha is incorrect. I happen to think in this case, for many reasons, why the halakha had to change about our attitude to non-religion. But yeah, it's fine. Growing up in a democracy affects how we change. Obviously, I'm influenced by growing up in the Western world, and I'm proud of that. I'm not ashamed to say that, yes, how I look at Judaism is a little bit, I mean, you try to be what you think is the truth, and Torah's truth, and Torah Emet, Moshe Emet. But yeah, I'm glad, I grew up in a democratic country. I have certain values that I picked up because I grew up in Canada, and I'm proud of them. What can I tell you? Who's Rav Yaakov Weingarten? I don't even know who that is. Well, what did I mention? I don't know what that is. Even the 18 blessings, if you want to tell me, I'd be very happy to know. Okay. Hashem responds that he will not destroy the city for the sake of the city. It's not what I say it's not all or nothing. You're right. He destroy, right. We discussed the different ways of storm. The standard way is he won't kill the wicked people in the merit of the righteous people. The merit people will save them, but they have to be betoch ha'ir. That's what we said. They have to be involved in the community. I forgot to mention that, right? The Rambam, if you separate from the community, even if you're observant, you can lose your share in the world to come. That's what the Rambam writes. What do you want? I can't help it. You would tell them to drive to shul on Shabbos to daven or not respond to that they're choosing to travel. Again, I'm not sure what the question is, but yes, I would tell an Orthodox Jew to stay at home rather than, that's obvious. But a non-Orthodox Jew, I would say to drive to shul. We don't listen. What do you think? There'll be no Baal Tshuva movement today if the shuls, if Esha Torin or Sameach and Lubavitch told people don't drive to shul. They don't talk about it. They don't talk about it. You get the shul, you get the shul. Obviously, because, to a religious Jew, of course not. That would be terrible. But they're driving to go shopping, to go to the ball game. So obviously, better drive to shul. That's right. So you have to know when you issue a halakhic ruling, you have to know who you're talking to. Who you give one shuva to a religious Jew and a totally different response to a non-religious Jew. That's true all the time. Okay, was Shevet Levi considered Haredi? I don't know that we don't have Haredim before. It's a modern term, just like Orthodox is a modern term. There's no such thing as Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, Haredi. That's all made up, and maybe that's very bad. Maybe we should do away with all these titles. You have Jews. Some Jews observe more, some Jews observe less, and what can you do, right? I don't know. Shevet Levi had a transformation. They were Kanaim, right? They killed Shem. I mean, that's interesting. That's for another time. We can talk about why. I was actually talking about that in my class in chat yesterday. Why Shevet Levi got to be chosen as special Shevet. Yeah, they didn't do the Chet Egel, but it's much more than that. Why didn't they do the Chet Egel? Who is Shevet Levi? And the transformation of Shevet Levi. Levi and Shimon are the wild kids. You know, Yaakov, he curses them on his deathbed. Okay, anyway, but then they turn out to be the leaders of the Jewish people. It's probably connected. They took that fervor and that thing and they channeled it to Avodah Hashem. Just like Baal Tshuva is on a higher level. You take that negativity and you channel it positively. But okay, next week we'll also discuss why the rewards punish our material. That's exactly what I said. Obviously, you wrote this before. Yeah, please God, I will discuss next week why all the rewards of the Torah are material. Rally in Washington Tuesday, yes, 1 to 3 p.m. Yeah, I know we're sending from Toronto lots of buses. People are flying. I mean, the bus from our school at Chad is leaving, I think, 10 p.m. Monday night, going to drive through the night, going to go to the rally and drive through the night to come back to Toronto. It's like a 11, sure by bus at the board, it'll be longer. It'll be like 11, 12-hour drive. But they have a lot of buses going from Canada too. And the Jewish reformist children will have even less interest. Yeah, maybe we have to make that was our job is to make Judaism interesting for people. And if we fail, don't blame the reform, blame us. If Jews don't keep Shabbos, we're not doing something right. When's the last time you invited your Reform neighbor into your house for a Friday night meal? I'm talking to myself too, right? If you want other Reform, start keeping Shabbos. Okay, so invite them to your house for a Shabbos meal and then see what are you doing about it. If we don't show Judaism is beautiful and inspiring, why should people keep Judaism? It's our responsibility. Don't blame. That's what Judaism always does. Whenever I was at a lecture this week, whatever, I want to go into the whole thing. But when the rabbis say, the rabbis always blame ourselves, right? Somebody was talking, he said they're very upset at the rabbis. They always blame the victim. The rabbis are not blaming the victim. The rabbis are not saying the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed, the Romans are good, it's our fault. No, that's not what the rabbi is saying. Of course, the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed because the Romans were powerful and they were conquering the world, blah, 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 and we revolted, whatever. But what the rabbis say, what can we learn? Whenever the rabbis say, they're not saying this sin, and that's why you have 28 different opinions in the Talmud, because every rabbi is talking to his constituents. What can our community do? That's why the Sinat Chinam is only one of about 12 reasons, and I'm not exaggerating when I say there's 7 in Shabbos, 1 in Yuma, 1 in Bava Metzia, 1 in the Dorim, at least that I can think about. Off the top of my head, 10 different reasons why the Beit HaMikdash was destroyed. So rabbis, none of those are the reasons the temple was destroyed. Those are all reasons, those are all messages we can learn from the destruction of the temple. You know, if we're weak, it's easier for our enemies. If we're protesting every week and the Jewish people are split, it's a lot easier for our enemies to attack us. That's just the reality of the world. That's it. But it's not saying it's like a punishment for Sinat Chinam. So when we see Jews not keeping Shabbos, instead of blaming them, let's blame, quote unquote, blame the victim. You know, blame what are we doing to stop that? Don't criticize others. Say, what can we do? So it's hard. Of course, it's so much easier to put other people in. We're great. We know the way, and everybody else is terrible. We can learn a lot. They're, Baruch Hashem, maybe I get this. I grew up in a wide-ranging family. I have cousins all in Lakewood, and my first cousin was the first woman to be ordained in Israel, and I'm very proud of them all. And we get along, quite well, and our family reunion was beautiful, and everybody came, and it's very nice, and everybody has what to contribute. You should do what you do is right, and you want to argue with them in a nice way, b'vakasha. But don't be proud, and let's work on what brings us to unite us as Jews. If the Goyim think we're one people, we better think we're one people. Okay, I don't want us to sermonize. I apologize for that. I'm here to learn about Tefillah, but I think it's very important. Okay, any other questions, comments? See, I'm not here in school today, but that's why I can go a little bit longer. Okay, anybody have any questions, comments, criticisms? B'vakasha, please criticize. And if I sent it out. I'm curious if anybody listened to my podcast. You don't have to listen, but if you do and you like it, very nice. And if you don't like it, please let me know so I can know how to make it better. But okay, want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom, and we should hear good news and all good things. And as my friend said to me, I mentioned I was talking to a good friend of mine in Israel yesterday. We were driving to New York in the car. We had a long conversation. So I said at the end, B'surot Tovot. So he said, Jay, I'm sick and tired of B'surot Tovot. Here's what you got to say. Let's see if I remember it. Got to say B'surot Tovot, Yeshuot v'nechamot, Nitzchanot u'nekamot. That's what you have to say. So I was like, everything, B'surot Tovot, good tidings, Yeshuot v'nechamot, God should salvation, should save us, Yeshuot v'nechamot, comfort us, Nitzchanot, we should win, and Nekamot, and we should avenge the blood of those who unfortunately have lost their life. So that's it. She said, I don't want to just hear B'surot Tovot. I want to hear B'surot Tovot, Yeshua v'nechamot, Nitzchanot u'nekamot. So, okay, I hear what he's saying, and we should hear good things, and God should bring Yeshua v'nechamot, and and Nitzchanot. Okay, everybody be well, Nekamot, whatever. And El Nekamot Hashem. That's what we see. He said we say it every day in our tefillah. God avenges the blood of people. That's what can you do? It's very sad, but it's the reality of life. Sometimes we have to take revenge. What can I say? Okay, everybody. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Shalom. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Shalom. Thank you.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you. Thank you. Okay.
Okay,